Next shape, hyperbolas. At this point, you're like, just tell me the equation, right? What's it going to be? Well, you might be like, wait a second, this looks exactly like the ellipse equation. X minus h squared, y minus k squared, a squared, b squared. What's the difference? Right, you see this negative sign. So an ellipse had a positive sign, and a hyperbola looks like this. It's almost like an unfolded ellipse that's like inverted. I don't know. We have two types of hyperbolas, what we call right-left and then up-down. It still follows our same thing of the center being hk, but here we see something different. A squared is the first number, it should say. Or, this isn't going to make sense now, transverse is first. Transverse is first. Transverse is first. Okay, and then c squared is equal to, interesting, a squared plus b squared. So where this was now a minus, now that becomes a plus. So if we make one up here, let's do x squared over 9 minus y squared over 4 equals 1. What would the center be? Right, 0, 0. Now, we're going to use a squared and b squared, not just because it's the bigger number, it's because it's first. So a is 3, right 3, left 3, still has a 6 for the, quote, major axis, but now that's called the transverse axis. And it doesn't have to be the biggest one. It's just the first one. So that's a shift. And here b is 2, and that's under the y, so up 2, down 2. So the conjugate axis, we call it, is 4. Now we make something called the dotted rectangle. Not an ellipse anymore, but we make a dotted rectangle, and through that dotted rectangle we draw a giant X through the corners. These are going to be kind of our guideposts. It's hard to get them straight. For those, we're going to talk about the slopes of those guideposts, or the slopes of the asymptotes, and you can count that: rise of 2, 1, 2, 3, run of 3. Or the other slope was down 2, right 3. So once I get my picture, I do my slopes, and I just write them plus or minus. There's always one positive and one negative. Finally, we're ready to draw the graph. You have to look at what's first. If x is first, it's going to be a right-left, or we say it kind of looks like an X. And if the y is first, it's going to be up, down, or kind of look like a y, kind of. So since the x is first, I'm going to get these 2 points as my vertices, 3, 0, and negative 3, 0, which I could write as plus or minus 3, 0. And then finally, I draw in my hyperbola. It looks like 2 mini parabolas, but it's a whole separate thing. That it is a hyperbola. We're going to have 2 focus points. They're on the insides of those curves. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. So the c is plus or minus root 13. It's always right and left of the center, so that's going to affect the x coordinate. Phew, that was a lot, right? So let's try the next one. You might be like, isn't that the same one? What's different about number 1? Still has a center of 0, 0, right? That's nice. But now the a squared is 4 and the b squared is 9, because in the hyperbola, transverse is first. So since that's under x, I go right 2, left 2, length of 4, up 3, down 3, length of 6. And I make a dotted rectangle. Through that dotted rectangle, I make a big X. I count the slopes of those lines. Rise 3, run 2. So one's positive and one's negative. Then I decide, does my graph open right, left, or up, down? Right, it opens right, left, because X is first. So the vertices plus or minus 2, comma 0, and I can draw in my hyperbola. All right, so the green, I'd like to just point out that the green is the graph, right? The navy blue is not the graph, only the green. The foci, c squared, is a squared plus b squared. So again, is plus or minus root 13. So it's plus or minus root 13, comma 0. Okay, the next one is our first one with a non-zero, zero center. You knew it was coming, right? What's the center? Is it 1, negative 2? Or is it negative 2, 1? You are right. It is negative 2, 1 because that has to go with the x, right? So negative 2, 1 is the center. The a squared is 9 because transverse comes first, so a is 3. Since that's, so that's not going to be 3, that's going to be 6, right? Up 3, down 3. Since it's under the y, up 3, down 3. And then b squared is 4, b is 2. Since it's under the x, right 2, left 2. Like the 4 for the conjugate axis. And then make my dotted diagonal with my big X. It's hard to get those dotted. Count my slopes. Rise 1, 2, rise 1, 2, 3, run 1, 2. So it's plus or minus 3/2. And you can see with the 9 and the 4, you're always going to get the 3 and the 2, right? This is our first one that starts with a Y. So since it starts with Y, it's going to open kind of, quote, like a Y, up, down. And those two vertices, we're going to read off our graph. So it looks like negative 2, 4 is the one vertex, and then negative 2, negative 2 is the other vertex. The foci are always inside these arches. C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, again with plus or minus root 13. But now it goes up and down from the center. So I'm going to take that y coordinate and plus or minus root 13 to the y coordinate. Okay, going backwards. Let's see. Center is 5, 4, and here's the key, vertical transverse axis. So that means it opens up, down. So that means that y is first. And this is a minus, minus. And then x minus 5 squared equals 1. And then thank you for telling me that a is 2 and b is 6, right? Thank you. Really, this whole thing is about which goes first. So horizontal transverse axis means it opens right, left. That means x goes first. And this is nice because the center is 0, 0, a is 1, b is 4, so that's your a squared and b squared. Now, if you noticed, I never made you change the form. I just pulled that question out separately because it's pretty intense here with the ellipse, with the hyperbola. So I leave this a separate question. Pull out the 4. Notice I'm going to pull out the negative y squared plus 4y equals 36 and leave my 2 blanks. Half the middle term squared is a 1, but it's really a 4. Half the middle term squared is 4, but it's really a negative 4, right? So here I'm going to get 4x plus 1 squared. It never likes it here at the bottom of the page. Y plus 2 squared, so sloppy, equals 36. And then I got to divide everything by 36. Is it going to let me write it? Kind of. So my final answer here would be x plus 1 squared over 9 minus y plus 2 squared over 36 equals 1. And here's the good news. You don't have to graph that, right? So on that change the form question, even on the test, all you got to do is change the form. That's it. So there we have it for hyperbolas.